Hello and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour and I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, one of the civic partners for our show. Today we're going to be doing an update on the comprehensive plan for the town of Potsdam, and our guest is Rose Rivezzi. Rose, it is nice to have you back on North Country Matters.
Nice
Thank you. The last time that you were a guest, we talked about getting the process started for updating the town plan, and you've been one of the folks who've been leading that process. So it's been going on now for a little over a year, and we thought this was a good time to get an update to find out where things stand. So let's remind folks about what a comprehensive plan is in general and the history of these plans here in Potsdam.
Okay, to start with, I guess the town has never really had a full comprehensive plan. What we've had before was a community study, which did a little bit of what a comprehensive plan does. The village of Potsdam has a comprehensive plan, and the village of Norwood, as far as I know, does not. So we decided that it would be a good thing for Potsdam to have a comprehensive plan for the whole town. And it's a document that just basically guides the town board. It's a summary of what is. So in the plan will be census data reflecting population, housing, economic data, just whatever I can glean from the census reports, as well as information on current land use, maps that pertain to showing the soil types we have here. The zones, whatever information can help people understand us as a community. It's a listing of assets and concerns we have that came from those initial groups that pulled together. And then from those, goals that we'd like to see for the town. The other thing I'm trying to do in this document, there's already quite a bit out there that the county has done. Like the county has done an extensive economic development plan. The county has done an agricultural plan for the whole county. And so I've spent some time reading whatever documents I could find that have already studied our county, including Potsdam, and then pulled from those summaries of what pertain to Potsdam in particular. So what I'm hoping a lot of this document is not only a roadmap of goals for our town, but also a way anybody who's new to our community could pick up this document and find out what we have, what we are, where we are. I think the value is almost more in that than even the goals, because the goals can change over time. Sure. And they're not set in stone. They're not law. They're just goals. They're just guidelines.
Right. And actually, one of the things that I have taken away from doing this show is that St. Lawrence County and the North Country are incredibly rich in resources, but we don't really know what we have, and we don't know who is doing what. So having that kind of a roadmap is really critical if you're going to be able to move forward as a community.
Right. And I'm learning a lot, like for example in the economic development section, just listing all the resources somebody who might want to start a business here have. It's just nice to have them all in one place. And also the initiatives that philosophically maybe are guiding the town board, like the Climate Smart Community Information, Complete Streets, Smart Growth America. I've also just did brief summaries and provide links to those websites that have a broader view, and then our plan will take the pieces that pertain to our town from those broader principles. So it's like, it's a lot of, I've been doing a lot of reading and summarizing.
Right. Well, one of the things that has impressed me about the town of Potsdam's process is that it's been so open and so collaborative. You didn't hire a consultant to help with the process. You're relying on local folks, volunteers, and input from the public. That process, it gives you a different, I think, outcome and a different feel for the outcome. Do you think this is maybe going to change the results? Is there going to be more ownership because of this type of process?
I definitely think more ownership. And obviously I feel I have a lot of ownership, but I am stepping down from the board. But I think it's something that can be passed on. And the people who have helped me, we are rich in resources here, and a lot of very essential support I've had have come from Clarkson University with Eric Backus and Alex French, having helped a great deal, just steering how a process can be run. And Karen Bage at the Health Initiative, who is very knowledgeable in grant writing and just how government documents are structured in general, she's been a great asset, as well as then all the people that I've been able to reach out to who I met on these initial committees and in these initial meetings to give me input and guidance. So I felt like with all that, and like I said before, I think I had an experience with a consultant when we worked on the dissolution study, and you still have to do the work. They ask you to go and, because they want you to have ownership, they ask you to go and find out the information. So I felt like, we weren't in a position financially to be able to put this kind of money in a comprehensive plan. So I said, what the heck, I'll just try to tackle it and see what we end up with. So I hope it's a usable, decent enough document.
Well, I think it will be because of the fact that you have been so open and so collaborative. People really are going to get a sense from looking through it that this is a true reflection of who we are as a community and what our resources are.
And I'd like to summarize very briefly that collaboration. I mean, it started about, like you said, not quite two, it was more than a year, almost two, it'll be 2 years in the fall, but we had that initial meeting that Eric Backus led, which was a brainstorming session, and from that we came up with the 6 focus areas of the comprehensive plan. And then each of those focus areas had 2 meetings, which were pretty well attended, and they were publicized and open to people, and that's where we looked at what are our strengths, what are our concerns as a community, and then from those the goals came up. So then after those goals were sort of lifted from that, we presented them again to the community in the last end of summer, and people had a chance to input. We had them up posted in the town hall where people could comment, prioritize them, add to them, add notes, come in and see. And then with that information, and not much shifted there. I think people seemed to like the goals that were on the table. I spent the winter and spring doing the background, the narrative work of it. So, and that
pulling the details
together, and which then also tweak and make the goals stronger. Like I find better wording or more specific, or another one that came up because of the county's plan or whatever. And then, so the next step is to present it back to some of the key people who've given me a lot of input. You being one of them, at some point you're going to get a link to a Google Doc which say, take a look, I want more comment now. And then when it's been edited more, it seems pretty good, I'll present it to the full board as a draft document, and then when they're comfortable with it, then it will go to the public again for again, another set of, take a look and see what we have, and it doesn't mean it can't be still changed or enhanced at that point.
So let's take a look, Rose, at the various groups that you broke folks down into and what some of the major conclusions have been. So one of the areas that I think is always of concern to any community is housing in neighborhoods, because we know in St. Lawrence County we have a lot of old housing stock, and a lot of work has been done on rehab, but there's still a lot more to work to do on that, and people are always concerned about the quality of their neighborhood, and rightly so.
Right. So just to give you a little background, the town has 5,519 housing units, and right now 10% of them are vacant, according to the census. The last census was in 2010,
right?
But the group, I forgot the name of the group, but they do follow up, and summarize new information. So they project data, and I believe they do more surveying. And so this is based on those numbers from 2013 to 2017.
So it's a little bit more current.
It's a little bit more current. So at that point they said 10% are vacant, but you're right. A third of the housing stock is pre-1930s, and in those first discussion groups, there was a lot of concern about the quality of the housing, how weatherized housing is, that people just don't have money to keep up the quality of their home, and so this topic actually lends itself to say, how much can a comprehensive plan really do? I mean, I don't know how much really a town could do in terms of goals, but a lot of times it's just being aware as a town board of what the needs are, and always being on the lookout for programs, for opportunities that then would be our job to inform the public what might be available. I mean, we have worked with the village on the community block development grants, and as opportunities come up, I think we would seek out ways to help people improve.
Actually, I think a good example, we had Dana McGuire, who's the St. Lawrence County Health Director, in last week, and one of the things she was talking about was older housing stock with a problem of lead contamination, and the fact that there is money to help people rehab their homes. So that's a piece of that quality of housing
I don't think
things.
that's
Yes.
in my plan right now.
Well, there you go. And so, but she was talking about that, and you know, that's really a function of older houses, and that it's a health hazard,
Right.
especially for young
So
children.
how do you get that information
Right,
out
exactly,
to the community?
exactly. So that also lends itself very well to a second goal that you had, which was looking at quality of life overall. And what were some of the findings there?
I think there was a desire to expand recreational opportunities for all ages, to promote more opportunities for community engagement. I think people had that sense of wanting that community. And again, I think, and here comes out the dissemination of information. How can we get information out? I mean, we have an aging population. We know that there's a need for childcare, elderly care. So again, as a town government entity, how much can we really do? But it will be just being aware of those needs and how do you get that information out to people when there might be opportunities. Or looking for situations where, you know, sometimes you can find ways to incentivize a developer coming in to develop more housing for aging in place seniors who don't want to leave the area. Again, it's those kinds of things. I mean, people want what most people want. They want a nice place to live, and they want to be comfortable and happy with
That's
the
right.
place where they live.
And let me do another little advertisement. Next week we have Andrea Montgomery, who's the director of the Office of the Aging, coming in to talk about the resources that her office has for our increasingly elderly population. So there's a lot of, again, it's one of those situations where there's a lot of resources, but we don't always know who's got what. So I think the fact that you understand what the needs are, and then you can start looking for partners.
Right, exactly.
So always a huge part of any town plan is looking at the business climate and the economic development opportunities, because one thing we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years in St. Lawrence County is a lot of the heavy industry has disappeared, and so what do we replace that with in terms of our economic development? Because we're not going to find people to come in and invest in this area with these big industrial operations.
And I think that's where Potsdam within our county has an asset that we need to capitalize on. You know, we haven't had the reliance on heavy industry so much as Messina and some of the other towns in our county. Our big asset is we have these 3 very strong institutions right now, in the 2 universities and the hospital. And they are major employers for our county. But also in terms of our town, they offer not only employment opportunities, but they offer, they improve the quality of life in terms of training, educational opportunities we have, health options we have, but they also are a resource. For example, just working on this comprehensive plan, we have had a partnership with some of the people at Clarkson who've helped a great deal on this. We started up the Climate Smart Communities Task Force, which is not part of the plan, but shapes the plan.
It's ancillary to it, sure.
Right, it's ancillary. And the students, there was a whole course designed with Clarkson students, and I think you had Alex French on.
Yeah, in fact, Alex is going to come in again in the fall and give us an update on that process.
Right, so there, we have resources here. So in terms of economic development, looking at the county study, I think what we need to do is promote Potsdam as a special kind of place. I don't think necessarily that we want to be like every other place, but maybe there's a way to attract, they word it in the county plan as the come here's or come back here's. Like there's a reason to come back here to live, and maybe an idea you were thinking of starting a small business, maybe this is the place to start it. Or come here in the first place, not because you have the things a more urban center can offer you, because we are not that. So you might want to be a doctor, you might want to be somebody who wants to start a business who wants to come and live here because of the quality of life we have here. So how do you attract those people? How do you let them know that this is a special kind of place to live and to work? So, and because of the colleges too, I mean, we have the incubation centers, right, at Clarkson, and there's always the hope that one of those startup ideas will need a place to then grow, I mean, expand their space, and maybe Potsdam would be the place, or somewhere in our county would be the place that would happen.
And you mentioned the hospital, and that is very much how they go about recruiting doctors. Is they find high quality, good providers who are interested in a rural lifestyle and who like the fact that it's that there's 4 colleges within 10 miles and that the school systems are good and that the housing is affordable. And those are the people they're bringing in with the idea of come and do your work here, but make your life here, and really invest in this community. And that has really paying off big dividends, because we're not seeing the pass-through of providers that we used to see a few years ago, where someone would come for experience and then they'd go on to somewhere else.
Right, and I think they've also improved the quality of what the hospital can offer to support them, which attracts them here too.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the fact that the Affordable Care Act has given the medical profession a sustainable financial plan has also helped a lot too, because that has made growing these local small hospitals something that is now financially feasible. That's really important.
What happens with that, though?
So that's good. So one of the, I know, well,
I know.
We have to keep telling the story about why it works, and it does work. So number 4 on our list is land use, and that's something that really can change over time, can't it?
Yes, and one of the things I've learned in doing this is that 1/3 of all the prime farmland in the county is in Lisbon, Potsdam, and Canton. And so I think that one of the things that we are working on in this plan is to make sure that we preserve that prime farmland. Because once you lose that farmland or it goes to another use, it's very hard to reclaim it. And then looking at just the assets, the natural resources we have here, and how can we protect them. The river being one of them, a concern of invasive species, the protection of the riverbanks to avert flooding. So it's looking at how our land is used, and also some of the concepts of trying to keep our growth clustered, so it's not just sprawled.
Right.
So I know that those are our code enforcement guys. They think of this. This is on their mind as something that they want to see. That smart growth, smart development.
Right, and I can tell you from personal experience. My brother, who lives in the Cicero area, lives in a housing development that used to be a pasture, and that land is gone forever in terms of being able to be used for agriculture, and that is not that's not smart growth. That's sprawl. Right. So those are important things, and I find it interesting that much of the agriculture is concentrated in 3 towns in this county, because at one time I'm sure that was a very different picture.
Well, it's weird. It doesn't mean because the prime lands are there, it doesn't mean they are farmed or they have agricultural use. But the designation of a prime farmland is looking at the chemical structure of the soil and how conducive it is to growing food, and so or that it can be prime with minimal work on it. So it's just that those lands are concentrated in these 3 towns, and so we should view that as an asset.
Right, and of course, in this day and age when there's so much interest in doing local foods, the fact that you've got good arable land close to population centers is an opportunity, isn't it,
right.
for business?
And that's one thing. A lot of these sections in this plan overlap. I mean, agricultural, like wanting to develop agricultural opportunities here as part of the economic development is tied to the land use. And are there ways that we can, I mean, how do you bring farmers here, small scale farmers here? How do you support the large scale farmers to help them farm better? I forgot what I found. The average age of a farmer today is like I want to say in the 50s. I mean, it is very much an aging profession, and how do you, but another great resource we have is we have Cornell Cooperative Extension right here in our county down the road, and they do a lot to work with supporting future farmers and looking at agricultural possibilities and small value-added possibilities that center around food.
Yeah, and those are things that are going to over time become that much more important, because one of the things we're seeing from global climate and weather destabilization is that the bread baskets are underwater right now in this country in terms of the Midwest, and so you have to develop those resources more locally if you want to ensure your own food supply. And it just makes sense to do that anyway. So land use is important. Another big important area, and something that the town does have to deal with, is infrastructure, because a lot of infrastructure falls on the town to maintain and do the replace and repair on, doesn't it?
Yes, and we have a very good highway crew. John Kelleher does a great job for the town, but always working with diminishing resources, right? There's always the threat that the CHIPS money, the money that they help the town pave roads, gets this threat of being cut all the time or reduced, and so it's always trying to work with that, which is very difficult. And but one of the things that we're looking at in the infrastructure area is the town garage. I mean, we have a new town hall, we have a town court that looks very good, or a historical, they were able to save that historical building, which is great. But the town garage is probably in need of some repairs, which are costly. But one of the things we're looking at in this section of the plan is, it ties in with energy and resiliency as part of Climate Smart. You know, we need to have an emergency plan. That's one thing we don't have as a town. Like, what do we do in an event of a severe weather, like the ice storm that we had? I mean, the county has a plan, but we as a town need to have something in place. And so one of the ideas we had is that maybe the town garage on the other side of the river, because on this side of the river you have the town hall, you have the village, you have the fire department. We have some resources here to be emergency centers, but on the other side of the river, maybe the town garage could be developed to meet the increasing needs they have for their equipment, but also maybe there's a grant opportunity to make that an emergency center for heat, which is another thing like we don't think of as much these days, but is the number of days over 90 degrees or
that's right, and cooling centers.
Right, a cooling center or an emergency center for the winter ones that we're used to expecting. But you know, also wind events, and anytime people need to be displaced from their places of living because they don't have energy, they don't have power, they don't have the resources they need. So that's one thing we're kind of looking at in infrastructure.
Yeah. And that's good, because you know, I remember a few years ago when there was real concern about spring flooding, and there was real concern about some of the dams higher up on the Racket River, and if something happened to one of those dams, it would be a cascading effect all the way down to Messina, where it dumps into the St. Lawrence, and the community could literally be cut in half. And you know, we have two bridges now. For a long time we didn't, but if something happened, you would need to be able to have the resources to take care of people on the other side of the river. So I think that's very good planning. And certainly we know from at the county level and at the state level, there's a lot of substandard bridges in the area, and all of that stuff takes money and it takes resources to make sure that they're safe and up to speed. So having a good infrastructure understanding is the first step, isn't it?
Yes.
And so the last thing on the list was energy, and that really, in many ways, is where the greatest potential exists, isn't it? Because we're really on the cusp of being able to do a lot with homegrown energy.
Right. And so we are, because we took the pledge to work towards becoming a climate smart community, a lot of what is in that whole guiding principle can help guide our energy section of the plan. You know, with the goal of reducing municipal energy use, finding ways to, to convert to LED lighting. We don't have a lot of lighting in the town itself.
Right.
I mean, I think that there are 25, 26, they're more like in Hewiettville, Sissonville, Unionville. You know, converting those, and then making our buildings more energy efficient, but also is a whole community, how to educate the whole community to reduce their energy use. So we do have some benchmark data on the use of our energy use of our buildings, and one of the tasks that the Climate Smart Committee is working at, which we do jointly with the Village of Potsdam, is to see how we can reduce use as a community. You know, resiliency is all part of it, being prepared for these extreme events. But, right, this section is guided more with those opportunities that might present itself because of the climate smart work.
Right, and you know, we just saw Canton open up a municipal solar power area, and those are opportunities that might be available here with the right incentives, right?
Yes, that's certainly, you know, the town is considering those.
So when are you anticipating that the town board will actually get a chance to get their teeth into this? Is it going to take a while longer?
No,
You hope not?
No, this has got to be done by December because
Okay.
I'm off the board then, and I want this done. I mean, and I feel like, I remember when I first started this, Fred Hans, who worked on the village's comprehensive plan, said, Rose, just give yourself 2 years. It's, you know, and so that's about where
Right.
we'll be in about 2 years. And I think Canton, I think they're over 2 years. They had a consultant,
Right.
they're not even quite there
Yeah,
yet, as far as I know.
I actually have Mary Ann Ashley, the supervisor in Canton, coming in next week, and one of the things we're going to be talking about is their town comprehensive
Right.
plan process.
So I think that they're not even
Yeah,
there
as
yet.
far as
It's
you
been
are,
more-
yeah.
Right, well, no, I mean, they had a consultant, I think they started earlier. I don't know where they are, but I know it's not complete yet,
Yeah.
so I don't feel so bad.
Well, it's a big job,
Yeah.
and you've been very, very dedicated to this, but it takes a long time to pull the pieces together, and you
where I
can't
am
rush it.
is, it's in the, I'm sending sections of it to people who have helped as
Right.
we've gone along, and I hope to have it in the, those same sections in the town board board's hands, oh my goodness, maybe by the end of June. And then hopefully they get to look at it, and then when it gets cleaned up enough, I'd like to put it out there on the new town website, which we're developing,
Right.
a new website for the town, by midsummer, so that it can be discussed, we can have those follow-up meetings for input, and I'd like this all wrapped up by the fall. Maybe I'm too optimistic, I don't know, but I'm hoping it can be done.
You want to be able to vote on it before your last
Yes.
your last meeting, which makes
Yeah.
sense. So one of the things that this whole process has really kick-started is opening up communications and collaborations between the board and the community, and that is something that has not always been really, there hasn't always been a lot of that. So what's your thinking in terms of this process has started, this collaboration and this communication? How does the town board keep this going moving forward on other issues?
Well, I think that working with the board that I'm currently working with, we're a very open board. I mean, our meetings, we encourage people to come to our meetings to find out what's going on, to participate as much as they can. We have more opportunities now, I mean, with our Climate Smart Task Force. I mean, if they wanted to help out in that way, they just need to contact us. I mean, we can always use more people in that way. But I think one of the key things will be is that we are working on an improved, more user-friendly website. Cindy Believer's really pushed for that, and I think the previews I've seen of it, it's going to be a much more accessible site, so hopefully.
Interactive, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, or building in interactive potential to the site where people can give feedback or respond. I mean, obviously, and also be a better place to have access to, here's where you find the comprehensive plan, here's where you find the code information you need, here's where you find the maps you need, so it can be a more useful information. But we try to be an open, friendly office. I mean, I know Cindy's the face of it a lot of times because people see her, and she's
And that was a friendly face.
and that is a friendly face and very welcoming.
Yeah,
So we just,
right.
you know, we try the best we can, but it's always an issue. How do you communicate with
Right.
your constituents? And just hope that you're always open for people who want to communicate with you.
Okay, that's good. So Rose, I wanted to take a chance, when you were here the last time, you were starting the development of the Ives Park play space that your family was donating to the community. Tell me where you're at with that. We walked that last fall, and it wasn't finished, but I could tell that it looked like it was gonna be a fun space,
So work continues on it. We had to put it to rest last fall because, you know, when you're relying on volunteers and help, like the village crew, I have to work with when they have time. So we tried a couple weeks ago, but the ground was just still too wet.
The weather has not been cooperative this spring.
The ground has to dry out a little bit more, and hopefully we'll get the last posts in. And then we're waiting, we ordered a slide from a playground company in Ithaca. They're going to come and install it, but that again, like, is with their calendar. And so those are the kinds of things. We have the pieces lined up, it's still happening. I certainly hope it can all be done by the summer festival, but you know, I just don't know, because there are too many working parts, and you know, and it starts with volunteer number 1 and 2 and my son and my husband. I mean, trying to put the pieces together and pulling people. There are lots of people who want to help, but sometimes it's just lining up the sequence that's right, and I have to wait for one thing to happen before the next thing can happen, and then you have to wait on a part. So we were forestalled way at the beginning because there was a problem with the climbing wall components and when they came and how long that took to gain. But that happened last year, at least the mound got built. So now it's the next pieces. I'm hoping it's going to be done
this year, right?
It is going to be done.
But you can't give us a hard date, and I understand that.
I wish I could.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a great asset to the park, and it looks like a lot of fun for kids of all ages, that's for sure. And you're coming to the end of your second term on the board. That's 8 years of really a tremendous amount of dedication and time on your part, because you've taken this as a very, very serious opportunity to really give back to your community, for which we are very thankful. When you look back over that 8 years, what do you think the high points are?
I think the high points for me are how much I've gotten to know my community, right? I mean, how it works and how the pieces, who the players are, and it's nice to be able to make the connections and sometimes make things happen. So, I mean, I guess I feel proud about keeping the recreation program strong and starting this joint recreation committee to be maybe a more functional committee than maybe it had just been let go for a long time. Making sure that there's a town and village liaison again with the Town Chamber of Commerce, which again was something that had been let go. So I think it was just finding places where connections needed to happen, and making sure that those are in place. And then, you know, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to be part of this community. And I said to Ann and to my board, you know, we don't have a grant writer. We don't have a lot of people to do a lot of the things that need to be done. I will always be a phone call away and be ready to, now that I know what can be done, I know what's in the plan, I know what kinds of places they could use help. I mean, I would be a resource. But I encourage, I guess what I wanted to do more than anything, the reason for stepping away is because I could have continued on. I felt I still could have done more. But I do think it's important for other people to, if you don't step down, people won't step up.
That's right, you have to create space for people.
And I want other people to come and learn about their community. And it's a great board. The people sitting on that board now are wonderful to work with. It's a very positive board. And I think they're building very good collaborations with the village, both villages.
Right.
And I just want to see that continue, and I want somebody else to come in and have an opportunity to now be part of the club of knowing how our government works and wanting to help it move forward.
Well, one of the things that we've seen is that there's an awful lot of interest in running for the town board. There's well more candidates than there are seats, which has not always been the case in the past.
Right.
And so we're going to have some new faces on the board come the fall. What would be your kind of advice to somebody who's going to be on the board or is thinking about running, not only just for this board, but for any board? What should they be thinking about in terms of the time commitment and what they want to bring to the board.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest and say, it doesn't have to be crazy. I mean, the supervisor, yes. I mean, Ann, I have to give her so much credit. That is a part-time job. That's a lot of hours of work, because she's the face of the board, and makes it so our job being on the board isn't, like Marie did, like Ronald did, right? It's a lot of time.
We have a long history of people really, in the supervisor's position, giving a lot of time and a lot of energy to our town.
And so, I think it will be a very welcoming board, but, you know, not be afraid to ask questions, to get the information. And I guess what I've learned, I mean, sometimes decisions are hard to make. Sometimes I have to, you know, town boards are not the changing of the world places where politics happens, right? To me, it's not political in the sense of Republican, Democrat, Independent. Those issues don't really matter too much. You're really dealing with a limited budget that the taxpayers give, and how to make the best use of that money to keep our community functioning well. It really shouldn't be a political board in that way.
It's about service.
It's about service, right,
Yeah.
and wanting the best things for our community, and how do you get there. So I'd say, my advice is also that not to be afraid to maybe think you made the wrong decision, or you get more information later, to not be afraid to say, I hadn't thought through that the first time well enough, and to be able to change your position. I mean, I don't ever think a politician should say, or anybody, not even about people, that this is how it is, and I will never change my mind, because you can learn so much from another person's perspective and viewpoint, and it's like, oh, I never saw it from that way, and now, oh, I can understand why you feel so strongly about this. I think we need to be willing to listen and learn from others.
You know, one of the things that politicians are always accused about is being, well, they're a flip-flopper. But my goodness, we all should be flip-flopping, because that means that
Justified flip-flopping, right?
Justified, because that means we're not learning or growing or expanding our thought processes if we are carrying the same position from point A to point B when there's 20 years in between. Right. So you know, I think that's very good advice, and I think that one of the things that you've certainly seen in the 8 years is that the needs of the board's need to address issues has changed over 8 years, and you couldn't do the same job today that you did 8 years ago, because you've addressed some of those issues, but new ones have cropped up. Right. So you have to be flexible.
Right, for sure.
That's great. Well, thank you for your service, Rose, and thank you for coming in and talking about this process. And thank you for being willing to shepherd us through it, because it has been a big job, but it will certainly be that roadmap that you talked about earlier for the whole community to use as they look to move forward in time. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So our time is up. This show is a collaboration between the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters and the Potsdam Public Library. It's filmed here in the Fred W. Cleveland Computer Center of the Potsdam Public Library. And please remember, our North Country matters. Thank you. Thanks, Rose. That was